All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Mullet and Goose.
I'm Mullet.
I'm Goose, and we have a very special guest with us today. It is Andy Demetra, the voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. How you doing today, Andy?
I am honored to be on this program, guys. Thank you so much. I can honestly say in my 18 years of broadcasting, I've never talked with a mullet nor a goose, so this is new ground for me, but I'm excited.
We are very excited for you to join us today. I want to tell us a little bit just about yourself, let the fans know like who you are and like what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. This is year 5 for me as the voice of the Yellow Jackets, and prior to that, I spent 7 years as the play-by-play voice of South Carolina men's basketball and baseball. I actually got my break in broadcasting calling South Carolina women's basketball on the radio. This was well before the years where they had become a perennial national title contender. I think my first 2 years with them, they were combined 3-25 in the SEC. But it's been a really fun journey, 18 years of broadcasting and, wake up excited to go to work each and every day. So I think as long as you feel that, you're in the right profession.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So what was your favorite college team growing up? I know we all had our favorites. So, I mean, what was yours growing up?
So I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago. I really, to be honest, did not have a favorite college team growing up. My dad went to the University of Detroit, which disbanded its college football team in the 1960s. My mom went to an all-women's college in Milwaukee. So it's not like I had my fandom for a college football or basketball team passed down to me. The only college basketball team that I can remember latching onto a little bit growing up, and I know this will be sacrilege given where I work, but it was Duke. I remember watching Christian Laettner's buzzer beater at the Spectrum versus Kentucky when we were on spring vacation. But I'd stop short of saying that I was a Duke fan, but that was one of the few, if only, college basketball teams that I really remember watching. For me personally, my childhood overlapped with the Michael Jordan years with the Chicago Bulls, right? And I'm from the Chicagoland suburbs, so how could you not fall in love with those Michael Jordan NBA championship teams? So my frame of reference growing up was much more on the professional side than the college sports side. But once you go to college and once you experience a true college sports atmosphere, it's hard not to fall in love with it. And I realized what I'd been missing for 18 years prior to going to school.
I mean, I think I can speak for everyone when I say there's nothing like a college football or basketball game. There's nothing like it. So you were talking about sports broadcasting a little bit earlier. When did you know, when did you have that aha moment? Like, that's what I want to do.
So I probably caught the bug my junior year in high school. I always had this vague notion that I wanted to do something in sports and play-by-play. And it's kind of funny. Before I even discovered play-by-play or understood what that was, I was always fascinated by words and the English language. And I remember when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I used to love writing short stories on my family's computer. And my mom, who ironically enough was a math teacher, gave me a paperback Roger Connell's Thesaurus.
Right.
And I remember being so mesmerized. There were all these words out there that could more vividly capture what was on my mind in writing these stories. And so then when I discovered play-by-play, what is it but the art of trying to find more vivid ways to describe things? So again, I caught the bug for good and knew that I wanted to pursue it as a career my junior year in high school. We had a very small, low-rent radio station at our high school. The signal of the station probably didn't extend much beyond the parking lot, but I remember getting involved with it my junior year, and I just had that certain feeling like this is unbelievable, and just the thrill of being on the air and trying to carry a conversation and captivate an audience. I think I knew for certain then that that was the path that I wanted to take professionally.
You've been broadcasting for a while now. What was it like broadcasting during COVID year?
It was different, but at the same time, it was very much the same. Obviously, every broadcaster was affected. We had to get very comfortable broadcasting games remotely. Fortunately, at Georgia Tech, we have an ACC network video operations center. So even games where we couldn't be there in person when Georgia Tech was on the road, we'd still have a bank of monitors that we could watch and alternate camera angles in many cases. So you still could do your job. And at the end of the day, whether you're there in person courtside or whether you're at an elevated position or whether you're having to call a game remotely, your job and your responsibility is still the same. And that's to describe as accurately and artfully as possible what's going on for your audience. And for me, there was something vaguely nostalgic about calling these games remotely, because I dare you to find me any broadcaster who's in this profession who didn't growing up pretend to broadcast a game off whatever they were watching on television. I remember we had this tiny television in our kitchen growing up, and I used to pretend to call Chicago Bulls games, off this little tiny TV monitor. So when I had to do that again, calling games off, fortunately, bigger monitors this past season, it was there was something that was very reminiscent about that whole experience. But like I said, at the end of the day, your job is still the same. You want to tell the narrative of the game. You want to capture the emotion and the excitement and the suspense as accurately and descriptively as you can. So in many respects, things, maybe the settings and the surroundings changed, but the essence of what we did really did not.
That's good. So being in the ACC for the past 5 years, could you say, what would your ACC all-time starting five be if you had to pick one?
Oh boy. So we're talking Georgia Tech and non-Georgia Tech teams?
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Second
All
Man
time.
alive. Okay. Well, I'm going to put on my gold-colored glasses, and Jose Alvarado definitely belongs in that all-time five, because I have not called a more fun player in all my years of broadcasting than Jose. So he definitely is reserved one of those spots. Zion Williamson, only saw him one game 1 year, and it was at Cameron Indoor. And when you broadcast at Duke, you're essentially in the crow's nest. You are way up near the top of Cameron Indoor. So I didn't get to really experience Zion Williamson and the physical specimen he was from an up-close view. But he did some things that you rarely ever get to see at this level. So I think he'll be on that list as well. Oh, gosh, this is really good. I'm so tempted to, put Moses right on there and Michael DeVoe, but, I don't want to make it too much of a Georgia Tech slant.
Right.
I would say Cameron Johnson of North Carolina was always somebody who impressed me. He's just a really fluid player inside and out. Just a great scorer. With Virginia, they have so many great players. They almost kind of blend into one another, but that's kind of how they are. And, the results sort of speak for themselves. How many am I at right now? 3 or 4? I could go with top 10. That probably would be easier. But I think it gets to your point that the ACC in basketball, it is truly the best conference in the country. And every single game, you're either calling for your own team or calling with the opposing team a future pro. And that's what makes it so exciting. You're watching the future of basketball every single time you put on a headset and you're calling a game.
Yeah, that's
Exactly right.
That's exactly right. And so we're going to get into kind of the more Georgia Tech aspect of things here. So watching, Jeff Collins in his second year at Tech, and who do you think offensively, defensively, special teams wise, who do you think exceeded your expectations? Like you thought they would be here, but they just rose to the next level.
Somebody who really put it all together in his final season who impressed me was Jalen Camp. I think the productivity that he had, and he was injured his junior year, which was Jeff Collins' first year, so he never got to fully showcase himself, but he showed he was a very viable receiver and somebody who could carve out a professional future for himself.
Right.
We had read all the clippings and heard all the whispers about Jahmyr Gibbs and the kind of talent that he possessed, but to see him do it in person, he absolutely lived up to the billing, and I can't wait to see his career evolve. And then Jeff Sims, again, here was an Elite 11 quarterback and somebody who was a 4-star guy, and it comes with it some potential, no doubt. But I think there's always some well understood apprehension about how well somebody can transition to the college game and pick up on the speed of it. But yet Jeff made some throws last year that just flat out dazzled you and just makes you really fired up about what he can do in the future at Georgia Tech. So I would say those are two of the guys on offense that really exceeded my expectations. And the best part is their best years are still ahead of them.
Oh, that's right. And one of those shows that you mentioned, what comes to my mind, even then the big loss at Clemson at home, was that first one. It was a 7-0 ball game. I mean, he throws a bomb downfield. And that one spoke to me because I'm like, okay, yes, we ended up like Georgia Tech definitely ended up losing that game. But that shows, I mean, that's Clemson's first defense. That's their main guys right there. And that shows you his potential. That I think his best years are ahead of him, like you said. And basketball, what do you, same question there, but just on the basketball aspect for.
Well, I think the obvious answer is Moses Wright, because I got to see him all 4 years, and you take this raw athlete who had only played 1 year of varsity basketball. And, people tend to forget he actually started the very first game of his freshman year when Georgia Tech opened up in Shanghai, China against UCLA. So I chide some people that, yeah, he was an unranked guy and below the radar, but he did what very few people do, which is start the very first game of his freshman year. But to see his growth over 4 years, if you told me even at the end of last season that Moses Wright would be an ACC Player of the Year, I might have told you that was a stretch. So the numbers that he put up this year were just unbelievable. And it's a testament to the development that he had under the tutelage of Georgia Tech staff and the investment that he made in himself to grow and get better year after year after year. He by far exceeded my expectations. And, somebody else who exceeded my expectations this year was Jordan Usher. Jordan matured so much. He was a high flyer, elite athlete, but sometimes it takes a while for those guys to marshal that all into a fluid skill set. And, Jordan's showing his outside shooting touch this year, his ability to put the ball on the dribble and score off the bounce. His commitment to the defensive end, I think, was a really unsung part of Georgia Tech's rise this year. So he was another guy who exceeded my expectations just in how many layers he added to his game that benefited him and benefited Georgia Tech this season.
Yeah, I would agree. I like the way Jordan. I can definitely see the maturity you're talking about. I remember back when they played in that Hawaii tournament. You may have been on that trip. I don't remember. But I remember back then just seeing the not immaturity, but just the more of the athlete side of Jordan. And then now looking at this season, he's almost every game was about 15 points and 6 or 7 rebounds. And you saw that consistency from him. And he exceeded my expectations by far.
Yeah. And you know what? He has praised the work of assistant coach Anthony Wilkins and his development. And a lot of that is just unglamorous drill work that you do at practice. It can be monotonous. It can be tedious, but it really pays off. And he embraced it. Anthony did a tremendous job working with him and adding refinement to his game. And really great to see Jordan put it together. And the great news is he's coming back for his additional season. So
that's great.
Ush TV, as we call him, get renewed for another season. We're excited about that. Excited that I might get to call some more Jordan Usher dunks next season.
I love my Jordan Usher dunks, especially that mailman at Miami. That was something else.
He was feeling himself that day. He certainly was.
I think everyone was feeling himself that day at Coral Gables. And we'll talk about your, I guess, not way too early now, but your way too early kind of football picks. We got the spring game coming up, I think Monday or Tuesday, somewhere around there. What are you looking at this season? What are you looking for? What do you think? I know we've got a tough schedule ahead. We always do in the ACC, but what are you thinking for this year football-wise?
I just continue to expect an upward trajectory with all 3 phases of the game. I'm really excited to see how much growth Jeff Sims has had in the offseason, what kinds of throws he's capable of making as a sophomore that he might not have made as consistently as a freshman. There'll be some questions about the wide receiving core. Anytime you lose players like Amarian Brown and Jalen Camp, you're naturally going to have some questions about who steps into that role. But the great part is Jeff Collins has cultivated a lot of depth. And I think we're going to start to see the fruits of that recruiting and the fruits of that depth really show up in year number 3. I'm excited to see if the offensive line can continue to grow. I'm excited about what some of the transfers can do on front. And then defensively, Georgia Tech has a lot of depth, a lot of experience, a lot of talent in the back four. It's not easy to replace somebody like David Curry, but they have some really physical guys who look the part. And I'm excited to see, given more snaps, given more reps, given more opportunities, how they seize that role And then on the defensive line, let's not forget Georgia Tech was really banged up last year in the box. But with guys like Jordan Dominic and Antonius Clayton and some of the other edge rushers that they brought in, it might not seem very glamorous, but Georgia Tech finished 71st in the nation in sacks per game last year. And yeah, that seems like a middling number, but in the previous 6 years, they hadn't ever finished inside the top 100 in sacks per game. So we saw an uptick in Georgia Tech's ability to crash the pocket and disrupt things for a quarterback. And Jeff Collins is all about that mayhem. He loves to dial up pressure, and I think he's got more guys that he can count on to fulfill those visions of mayhem. So that's what I'm excited about, to see if Georgia Tech can continue that climb in its pass rush. We saw it in brief bursts last year, but I'm excited to see if we can see it on a more week in, week out basis next year.
So you touched on football right there. What are your projections for basketball as well?
Well, I will say anything with an asterisk, because we got guys like Moses Wright and Jose Alvarado who have the opportunity to come back, and they're going to make the decision that's best for themselves. But we do know that Jordan Usher is coming back. We do know Bubba Parham is coming back. Michael DeVoe can potentially come back. He's put his name in for the NBA draft. He'll get his feedback from the NBA advisory committee, and then again make a decision that's best for himself. But it's hard to kind of peer into your crystal ball, at least as we sit here talking, because you don't know which of those players will be back, which won't, and are going to make, like I said, the best decisions for themselves. But Josh Pastner has shown that his teams play hard, and they play with a sense of connectedness. Whatever may come of Georgia Tech in the transfer portal this spring, and I know Josh has several times mentioned that they're going to poke around the transfer portal, and if they need to fill any positional gaps through the portal, they're welcome to do that. And the success that they had this year, I think, makes Georgia Tech so much more attractive to these high-level guys who put their name in the transfer portal. So, hard right now at the beginning of April to project what next season might look like at Georgia Tech, because we simply just don't know what the roster is going to look like. Right. But there was such a proof of concept with Josh Pastner and his system and his culture that I think those things will endure and carry through for Georgia Tech. And you're going to see a lot of those same values that were responsible for Georgia Tech's success last season be on the floor next year. And that alone should be enough to get Georgia Tech fans excited.
Right. And one thing I saw towards the end of last year is the amount of productive minutes from guys who weren't necessarily getting all the playing time, but when they did come in, they stepped up. One of the guys that comes to mind is Rodney Howard. I mean, he had some big minutes late. I know in the tournament that especially he gave us very productive minutes, and I can't wait to look forward to that next year, especially.
Yeah, Rodney's best basketball is ahead of him, and he played a season high in minutes in the ACC tournament quarterfinals versus Miami, so he gradually earned the trust of Josh Pastner. His offense will continue to grow and develop. And again, this is still a young guy. I mean, even if you don't take away this past year, because guys were able to repeat a year, he still has 3 more years theoretically left at Georgia Tech. So knowing what this Georgia Tech staff did with Moses Wright and trying to project that onto what they could possibly do with Rodney Howard, I'm excited to see what he can do and what he can bring to the floor in his years ahead at Georgia Tech.
So obviously, a little bit earlier, you spoke on Moses' development from year 1 to year 4. Could you talk a little bit more about that in depth and what you saw in him?
Well, Moses came in as a really raw, unrefined guy, but also he did some things, even as a freshman, watching him in practice, that athletically nobody else on the team could do. He had a long, long way to go. But to his credit, he stayed faithful to the vision, and he took to coaching well. I think we started to turn things around with Moses in the ACC tournament his sophomore year, when he had 25-7 versus Notre Dame. And that's when you first thought, okay, maybe there is something here with Moses. He had a lot of maturing to do, both in his game and in the way he handled himself on the floor. But what stuck out to me about Moses, especially this year, is he became a 3-level scorer. Moses was never a reluctant shooter, but he wasn't the most accurate shooter either his first few years when he'd step out beyond the arc. This year, his attempts were modest, but he was still close to a 40% three-point shooter. He could step out along the baseline and hit those 15, 17-footers. He could catch in the high post against his own defense, square up, and knock down those foul line jumpers. It's no surprise that he had 2 30-10 games in back-to-back seasons against Syracuse in that zone because of his ability to show that soft touch from the elbows. And so, Moses just, again, was more than just a bouncy guy around the rim and a rim-to-rim runner. He showed that ability to score from the mid-range and beyond, which was not something that Georgia Tech could rely on him for his first couple of seasons. So you can be in this broadcasting business for a long time and not see somebody develop from his first year to his last year the way that Moses Wright did. I certainly hope so, for the sake of a lot of these guys that Georgia Tech will have in the years to come. But the growth and development of Moses, it's something that you rarely see. And I really hope Georgia Tech fans, I think they do, but I really hope they appreciate what they watched.
Oh, I mean, most definitely. I think we all, I remember Moses from his freshman year. I went to a couple games on the road and they came up here to North Carolina. It just, the development was huge. So you mentioned earlier, Jordan Usher and Bubba Parham returning. So what are your thoughts on Bubba and Jordan's return? What do you expect from them two, especially? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what do you think the team needs from them, especially from during the offseason, what they can work on?
That's a great question. Bubba was such an unsung guy who embraced his role on this team. I think Bubba is still a better shooter than his percentages have maybe shown this year and last. He's such a hard worker defensively, though. He makes sound decisions when he has the ball in his hands in the half court. That's why his turnover percentage is so low. But Moses is, Bubba's minutes, you figure will increase next year. And I'm just excited to see, being that everyday guy in Georgia Tech's rotation, which we saw certainly a lot of this past year. But, I'm excited to see if Bubba can raise that 3-point percentage up to the high 30s. Maybe if he can cross 40%, that'd be awesome, because that's what he shot his sophomore year at VMI. And then with Jordan, his ability to score off the dribble. And if Jose Alvarado doesn't come back, Georgia Tech loses somebody who is really good in late shot clock situations. I think Jordan can fill that role because he can create off the bounce. Can he continue to grow in that element of his game, even if it means pulling up from 15 feet and beyond? That's what I want to see Jordan continue to develop. The work rate is there, consistency, rebounding. I look to see that. He made so many strides in his defense. Can he continue to be that every game defender, especially when he's one-on-one on his man and denying dribble penetration? There was a lot to like from Jordan this year, and hopefully there's a lot even more to like with what he adds to his game next year.
So we always have a segment on our show. We have things that make your mullet say woo. Cooper,
oh, boy.
He got the flow. He loves it.
That's a luxurious one, I must say.
Thank you.
Oh, speaking of hair, do we know what they're going to do with Coach Pastner's hair yet?
Oh, God. I don't know. And look, I accept full responsibility for this becoming a phenomenon, because this all sprang from a television interview that we did for our Coach's TV show with Jose Alvarado. And I asked him some questions about his changing hairstyles. And somebody randomly reached out to me on Twitter, and it wasn't even for the show specifically. I think it was for GT60, which is our Coach's call-in show. And
right.
he suggested that maybe the next person who should have his hair done is Josh Pastner. And so I just kind of, in passing, tossed that out to Jose at the end of our interview to see his eyes light up.
Right.
I think that this was the most brilliant idea somebody has ever proffered to him. And of course, some of our greatest minds here at Georgia Tech got onto Photoshop and made Josh Pastner look like he was Rip Hamilton from 2006 with the Detroit Pistons. And so I was proud, and then I was borderline mortified. This turned into a kind of a story, but to Josh Pastner's credit, you can never say he's not a player's coach by saying, you know what, if we make the NCAA tournament, I'll consider it. So we'll see. I guess stay tuned on that. But that will certainly be a sight to behold if it does come to fruition.
So back to the things that make your mullet say woo. What's something that makes your well, not your mullet, but what makes your mullet say woo? What would be like your most exciting moment you've called at Georgia Tech, whether it's a specific play or just a game in general? What was your, you know, my one thing that'll stick with you forever?
Okay. And I will say this, my mom would never have let me grow my hair long when I was a kid. So I'm glad that I can kind of let my hair grow out vicariously through you guys with this segment. So I would say two moments. Number one was my very first year when Todrick Jackson had that layup in transition at the buzzer to beat Notre Dame. It was a packed house in McCamish. So that was like my first true Thriller Dome experience as the voice of the Yellow Jackets. We'd just come off beating number 6 Florida State during the midweek. Notre Dame was another top 20 team. And you so rarely see a walk-off fast break layup like Georgia Tech had, let alone one to upset a ranked team. And that was, I think that week cemented for everybody that this Georgia Tech team was way better than anybody had prognosticated in the preseason. So that's number one. And then my other favorite moment was this year, winning the ACC tournament. So poignant to talk with guys like Jordan Usher and Jose Alvarado in our post-game interviews and to see the emotion from those guys. What a win like that meant to them. And also knowing that it solidified an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. And it was so special for me as well because, as I told you guys earlier, 18 years of broadcasting, 15 as the play-by-play voice of a team. I had never been to the NCAA tournament. I had never even made it out of a conference tournament quarterfinals. This was all uncharted waters for me. So my very first conference tournament championship to call a win, which hadn't happened at Georgia Tech in the ACC tournament since 1993. And then to watch the celebration and the pure joy unfold before your eyes from the players and the coaches, that's certainly a memory that I'll have for a very long time.
You were talking about the emotion of like Jose and Jordan. And I was standing up there. I was next to Allison Williams, at ESPN. And I was kind of right around behind you where I was sitting. And I was looking at Jose and Coach Passner's interview. And you could just see, I mean, they've posted that video everywhere. But just I could almost feel Jose's emotion from where I was sitting. I mean, man was in tears. And just then he goes over to my parents were actually sitting next to his girlfriend and his daughter. And he just looked up at him and he goes, "I'm a champion." And I could just, feel it. And it was something else. It was a whole nother experience.
Yeah. It's one of those games where once you sign off and you're leaving the arena, it dawns on you that you called a classic, just a game that will always resonate with Georgia Tech fans. It's one of those games that, doesn't happen very often in your career, but you're acutely aware when you do get to experience it. And that was a feeling I certainly had leaving Greensboro Coliseum that night.
Right.
So getting into more get to know you questions, I would say. So you knew you wanted to be a broadcaster about in high school, I'd say. So was there any other point where you had an other dream job that you would want to do besides sport broadcasting?
Boy, if I probably weren't broadcasting, I'd be teaching. I'd probably be teaching junior high English. My mom was a teacher, but what's odd is I'm the only person in my family who did not major in math in college. My mom was a math teacher. My dad majored in math. My brother majored in math and economics. I have very, very little mathematical aptitude. So to my parents and to my brother, I'm probably what they'd call the statistical outlier of the family. So I'd be a teacher if I weren't broadcasting, but I can assure you it wouldn't be in math. It would be more in the line of English.
And so you ended up at Georgia Tech not being a math guy.
That's funny right there.
Hey, you know what? If I probably couldn't get admitted here, I'll find another way to get into Georgia Tech, right?
Oh, exactly.
So getting into more of the get to know you kind of stuff, what would you say would be your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, man, that you're putting me on the spot here because I am such a bad movie guy. Not like I like bad movies, but I so rarely watch them. Mm-hmm. You could throw out a movie that 90% of the population has seen, and I'd probably be in the 10% that hasn't seen it. So, oh gosh. But I'll say this: if there is a movie that's on, cable, and it just happens to be on, that I know I'll stop what I'm doing and watch it. it probably would be either Anchorman
Oh, love that.
or Office Space. So one of those two. Again, I don't say that I have the most like sophisticated cinematic taste, but those are two that if I catch them, some random cable channel, I'm probably liable to watch the rest of it.
Sit down and watch the rest of it.
All right. So here's our lightning round. We're gonna go. So I'm just gonna go really quickly here. Sweet tea or unsweet tea?
This is gonna be sacrilege. Neither. I just can't get into either. I've tried. I've been down in the South for almost 20 years. I can't get into it. Sweet or unsweet.
Hey, my cup over here.
Yeah. Speaking of sweet tea, we got some sweet tea in the glasses right now.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I love caffeine, but just my vessel of choice, unfortunately, is not sweet tea.
So you're telling me when you go to the varsity, you don't get a sweet tea?
No, probably not. I'm a Diet Coke guy. Sorry, I'm a boring broadcaster.
Okay, we can throw this at them then. Coke or Pepsi?
Yeah.
Come on. There's no question. Not only is it Coke, but I grew up in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is home of McDonald's World Headquarters. And what flows from the drink machines at McDonald's? Coca-Cola. So I'm a Coke person since birth, Diet Coke in particular.
See, Mullet over here thinks
Pepsi's.
I'm a Coke guy all the way.
I do not drink Coke for some reason.
To each his own, I suppose.
Hey, I'll tell you, here in about 20 minutes, he's going to go down there and grab a Coke. You watch.
Okay.
Hey, don't tell nobody.
I'll hold you to that.
Baseball or soccer?
I played more soccer than baseball growing up. I loved calling baseball. Did that for 7 years at South Carolina. But following Atlanta United here is really cool as well. I will default, though, to the sport that I played more of as a kid, so I will say soccer.
Oh, man, I'm a big Braves guy that play baseball myself. I disagree, highly disagree, but I get it.
Hey, it's been fun following the Braves, though. You're asking me to pick between two things that I both really like. Just because I like one doesn't mean I dislike the other.
Hey, well, we're going to make it even harder. Football or basketball?
Ooh. I will go back to what I said earlier. That my favorite team growing up was Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Mm-hmm. Basketball was the sport that I played the most of growing up, and nobody would ever confuse me physically for an ex-football player. So, again, I love my football, but given the choice, I got to go with basketball.
To bank off of that, NBA or NFL?
Ooh, NBA. I loved the NBA and NBC growing up. So it's that in many ways was like my first love.
Yeah. All right. So Mullet and I, we're kind of Southern boys, So do you, you may not do these, but hunting or fishing?
Neither. You know what? My outdoor activity of choice is running. I like getting into the fresh air and going on the trails for a few miles.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Some good
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
So as far as music goes, would you say you're more of a pop guy or a country guy?
Well, I have gotten into country a lot more since coming down here, which I was exposed to not one bit growing up in West suburban Chicago.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I'm probably still more of the pop genre than the country.
All right. Then we're going to go a little bit flashback here. I mean, not so much for you, but a little bit for us. 80s movies or 90s movies? I know you're not much of a movie guy, but if you had to choose, 80s movies or 90s movies?
Got to go with 90s movies. And oh, by the way, even though I didn't choose country, I did go to the George Strait concert in Mercedes-Benz a couple of years ago. So
I'm awesome, George Strait.
I got some.
Wow.
I'm looking for our invite next time he's down there.
Exactly right.
So big thanks to you, Andy, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Voice of the Yellow Jackets. Just great time. Thanks for talking with us. And we'll hope to see you, maybe get some other guys on here soon, maybe some Jose or Moses, maybe Coach Passner. Get them on here with us. We'd love to have them. Thank you so much.
Oh, man. I can't wait to hear Josh Passner answer pop or country. But in the meantime, guys, thanks so much for having me. And best of luck with your show. Can't wait to see it grow.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.